John Hollinger on his podcast discussed a list of players most likely to be moved this offseason. We're going to talk about that list a little bit and what it could mean for the offseason. We'll also look at one player that is often talked about being moved, but seems to be staying put with their franchise. All that and more right after this.
Welcome to the number one place for your daily basketball news and analysis, NBA Central.
What's going on, basketball fans? Welcome to another episode of NBA Central, your number one spot for everything basketball related. I'm the host, Hayes, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at NBA Central Pod on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that said, let's go ahead and get into this content today, y'all. And Hollinger and Duncan, on their show, they talked about a list of players from high-level trade options to lower-level trade options and meaningful players that could be moved. And I think this is a pretty solid list on some of the movement that we can see in this offseason and why it's really shaped up to be a wild offseason. Of course, at the top of their list, they talk about Giannis Antetokounmpo and Kevin Durant. Now, these would be the two highest profile names that could possibly be moved this offseason, especially with, coming out yesterday that the Phoenix Suns are likely to want to move Kevin Durant before the 2025 NBA draft so that they can recoup some picks in that draft and make some selections. It makes the most sense. Now, Giannis, I think the Giannis situation is a lot more fluid than even what it seems. I don't know if the meeting between ownership and Giannis, that they all came and walked away from it being on one page. There may have to be other meetings to happen, and I don't know if a Giannis trade happens during the draft, or if it doesn't happen until after the draft, maybe between draft, free agency, and training camp, somewhere in the middle of that, if it were to happen. Now, it would make the most sense for the Milwaukee Bucks to make that move during the draft so they can get some of these high-level draft picks that are in this draft. But, there are other ways around it. Like, as long as the team does not sign the rookie officially to their deal, they don't sign the rookie contract, they can still be traded after the draft. They don't have to wait to that December date. So there's some thought process that could be an option here. But Kevin Durant seems like the first domino, I should say, that will fall this offseason. And, we've heard talks of anywhere between Minnesota to Houston to San Antonio. And all of their fan bases have different levels of concern whether those moves would actually get what the franchise wants out of it or not. We see the comments from that fan base here on this channel all the time. But, we'll see what happens with these two players. But I think it's clear these are probably two of the biggest names that are out there on the free agent market this offseason, barring anything else interesting happening coming to that. So we'll see what happens there. But Giannis Antetokounmpo, Kevin Durant were the first two players that they discussed on their show, and it makes a lot of sense, man. These are if you want a move that can really, change your franchise for now, of course, these are the guys that you look at it. I'm surprised to see as many fans, especially either Rockets or Spurs fans, that really feel like Kevin Durant doesn't move a needle. And I think that just speaks to like where Kevin Durant is at this point in time, I guess, right? Like how people view him with the two failed teams that he's been on before in the Brooklyn Nets and the Phoenix Suns. But, we'll see. It seems like teams don't necessarily have that same view, but we'll see. The next two players that they talk about, the next one we're going to focus on is Lauri Markkanen. Now, Lauri is an interesting case because Lauri's a player that puts up numbers. But he hasn't really been on teams that won. Even his year in Cleveland, it wasn't the best year for him. He had his best numbers really as a member of the Utah Jazz, but that team's never really won. And the question that I have is that do teams kind of look at Lauri as one of those empty calorie players as far as his stats? Is that what it is? Or they look at Lauri and say, listen, this guy can perform, he can produce, and if you put him on a team with better players around him, especially defense, that he can be good for you. And that may be the case. Lauri Markkanen is an interesting option to buy here because he's 28 years old. He'll be 29 next season. No, he just turned 28, so he's going to be 28 the majority of next season. 19 points per game last year on 42% shooting, also 34% shooting from three. But this is a guy that since going to Utah, he's had a 25-point season, a 23-point season, 19 last year with only playing 47 games. That's the thing with Lauri, the injuries. He's never played over 60. He's played 68 games once. That was his rookie year. Other than that, the highest number of games played is 66 his first year with Utah. He only has 2 seasons playing 60 games or more other than his rookie year. And so there are, of course, going to be questions there on what then does that look like? Can you bet on Lauri's health enough for him to be and make an impact on your team if you do acquire him, especially considering what they could be, what you have to give up to get Lauri. Now, Utah is a team that's always a good trade partner because it seems like they are committed to being bad until they get what they feel is their franchise-changing talent. And so because that could put you in a situation where you can get Lauri for maybe a first-round pick and a protected one, maybe something like that. But, it'll be interesting to see if Lauri is moved, what he's moved for. But I completely understand his placing on this list, as well as Lauri is a talent, and he can fill it up, right? He can get you a block a game as well. Like, Lauri can do some things, so we'll see. The next one, Jrue Holiday. Now, Jrue Holiday is an interesting case because the huge contract. It's a huge contract for Jrue Holiday. While he does seem like he's starting to finally decline, does Jrue Holiday. So there are, of course, going to be questions there on what exactly are you getting out of Jrue Holiday if he does stay on if you do make a trade for him, are you getting enough out of him to where you feel comfortable with that? That's a question there. So, we'll see what happens with that. But Jrue Holiday is definitely a player that I can see a lot of teams wanting on their team because of what his reputation of a defender is, and even as a two-way player and a veteran that's, won a title before. So Jrue is a player that for teams that need a point guard, if they have the expiring salary or the matchable salary that they're willing to take that shot, they can. I do think that Jrue Holiday as well is going to be one of those players with Kristaps Porzingis that the Boston Celtics are looking to move to get under the second tax apron. So it could be there for the pickings there if you decide to go that route. Next up, they mentioned Jaylen Brown. Now, I think the Celtics have already come out and basically squashed all of that as far as Jaylen Brown not being moved. They're not looking to move Tatum or Brown. They want to keep Derek White if they can as well, Pritchard. Everybody else basically may be up available for Boston. So I'm not going to spend a lot of the time on the Jaylen Brown thing. I personally don't think Jaylen's going to be moved. I don't think they should move Jaylen Brown, but we shall see. Let's go back to the Utah Jazz, though. Walker Kessler. We talked yesterday about how with Miles Turner reportedly working out a contract extension with the Indiana Pacers, that they're close to one. You probably won't get it announced the results of the finals, but it seems like they could be close to an extension. With that said, Walker Kessler would then become one of the best center prospects potentially out on the market. When you look at Walker Kessler and what he is, Walker Kessler is just a center that just understands his role, his job. He's going to get you blocks. He's going to get you rebounds. He can do a little offense for you. His pick and roll offense is really good. His pick and roll defense can be hit or miss sometimes from Walker Kessler, but this is a guy that just impacts the game of basketball and knows what his role is. And I think when you look at a center, especially if you need a defensive-minded center, Walker Kessler can definitely be that for just about any team. Now, the problem with it is that he's next year's the last year on his deal, so he becomes a restricted free agent, and then you have to turn around and make your decision and your choice on your future with Walker Kessler pretty shortly after signing him, right? You have to kind of know what you want there if you're going to work out an extension during the season or just wait to see how it plays out. But at 23 years old, right, he'll be 24 next season. At 3 years in the NBA, he played 58 games last year, and while he's only averaged 9.4 points per game for his career, he averaged 11.4 last year. He shot the ball 66% from the field. He's averaged 2.5 blocks per game for his career in the NBA. He also did that with 12 rebounds last season. Walker Kessler is the consummate, just straightforward big man that knows exactly what their role is, executes in that role, and if you have a point guard that can get him the ball, oh man, watch out in that case. So I like Walker Kessler a lot. For a lot of teams that just need center help, a starting caliber center that just won't get in the way of your offensive players that you have there and just understands how to do his job and knows his role. Shout out to The Rock on that one. Walker Kessler is a really good prospect here. Next up, we got two scoring guards. Trey Young, they mentioned here. Now, Trae is a player that I have talked about. If you guys have watched this show for a while, I've talked about the prospect of Trey Young being traded for a while. And it seems like the Atlanta Hawks are sitting in a place where they're content holding on to Trae with the young core that they have there. He seems to fit in. But if they decide to make a move, if they decide to make a shift, especially with the GM change and things down there going on in Atlanta, if you decide to make a shift there, it would make some sense, right? Especially with the Atlanta Hawks, their draft capital that they have, things like that. Like they are ready-made to go younger, right? To build a younger core and to go forward. But if they see, especially in the Eastern Conference that's weaker, if they see an opportunity to where they can keep Trey Young, he fits in with their young players, you draft the right player, they pick at number 13 in this draft, there's a huge possibility that they just hold on to what they have. They pick at 13 and 22 in this draft. They can add some nice young talent, and if that talent fits in with Trae, Dyson, Jalen Johnson, who I love Jalen Johnson, I think he's a really good player in this league, that they can hold on to him. Trae is going to come with a pretty cost, though. But I think for teams that need point guards and scoring, Trey Young can make a lot of sense for teams out there, and it could make some sense for teams to take a bite at that. The last player on their list is Anfernee Simons. Now, this is a guy that it's really hard to judge or know what you're going to get from Anfernee, because he can score. He can outright fill it up. Make no mistake about it. And if you just need scoring, he makes a lot of sense. I think you can convince yourself on like the Orlando Magic being interested in Anfernee Simons or something like that. For teams that maybe had hoped that the Suns could end up trading Devin Booker. That seems like it's not going to happen with him being involved in hiring the new coach. Anfernee Simons could be a good pivot to as far as needing scoring out there on the perimeter. Now, size limitations is a problem. The defense is a problem. But for a team like the Orlando Magic, for example, that have some of that defense already built into their system, maybe they're perfectly fine taking a bite on Anfernee Simons. So this is a player that I think a lot of people expected also to be moved at the trade deadline. That seemed like there wasn't even any advanced talks there. We'll see what happens with Anfernee Simons. But overall, I think this is a solid list from Hollinger and Duncan. I think they make a lot of sense on who they have on this list. Who makes sense for these teams to move off on, except for the Jaylen Brown one. I think it all makes sense. Let me know down below. What do you think about this list? Do you think these guys are likely to be moved this offseason? And which do you think is the most likely? Let me know that down below. But a player that, I have talked about moving on from that seems like they're not to is that the New Orleans Pelicans and Zion Williamson. We know that the recent allegations around Zion, I'm not going to get into that, but it seems like Zion is here to stay for the Pelicans. Joe Dumars said on Wednesday this: I've had really good conversations with Zion. We've had lunch, dinner, watched playoff games together. We've done it all. I've had some real honest conversations with him, some real direct honest conversations. We're going to go forward with Zion. He's going to continue to be a focal point here as we go forward. I sent him to the lottery for a reason. I want him to start focusing on the responsibilities of being the best player here and the focal point. There are some responsibilities that come with that. Go represent your organization. And hey, if that's what the place, like, we know what Zion can be when he's on the court. The problem has been, can he stay on the court? The off-the-court shit is the off-the-court shit. But for Zion and what he can be when he's healthy, it's hard to think about letting that go, especially when you do have the opt-out at the end of in every summer where you can opt out of Zion's contract if you need be to do that. So it's not like, here's the thing. Taking a shot on Zion as you're trying to rebuild this team and him being the focal point is perfectly fine. If Zion stays healthy, you're going to be able to move him. With Zion's opt-out, even if he doesn't, there's a chance you're going to be able to move him, and a team would be willing to take a shot at him because of what he can be when he's fully healthy. So because of that, it makes a lot of sense for them to hold on to Zion. I still have some questions about the direction of that team overall, but that's not just because of Zion. That's because of the team overall, the talent level, those type of things. And we'll see what type of moves the Pelicans make. I do think they're going to be a team that's active out there. I think CJ could be a player that's on the move. DeJounte Murray could be on the move, right? So we'll see what happens with this team going forward. But them zeroing in on Zion still being the focal point of their team, I guess we'll see. Like, again, I know you're going to get a varying degrees of answers here depending on how people feel about Zion, on what the Pelicans should do with Zion. And when it comes down to it, for me, I'm just looking at, all right, now that you've picked this path, all right, now how do you solidify that, right? What moves do you make around this then to put your roster in the best position to get the most out of the talent in Zion Williamson? You got Yves Missi, who stepped up a lot. You got a draft pick this year. What are you going to do with that? I guess that remains to be seen, right? Lastly, before we get out of here today, the Kings are reportedly eyeing Tyus Jones as the point guard to go after to replace De'Aaron Fox on this roster. This comes from Mike Soto, who says Sacramento expected to explore trade and free agent market for point guard help. Among several point guards on Sacramento's radar is unrestricted free agent Tyus Jones. I think that, anybody who's interested in Tyus maybe should take a look at his brother Trey Jones as well. Both Jones brothers are unrestricted free agents this offseason. I think Tyus, he showed that he could help that Phoenix Suns team last year. That team was just in such disarray. If you get Tyus Jones into this team, to me, that signifies that the Kings are looking basically to keep everything the same and have another point guard, have a point guard in there and see how good they can be next year. Maybe they still look to move DeMar. That could be a possibility there, but we heard that they are keeping Domantas Sabonis. He's not going to be a player that's on the move. So now you have Tyus. You could have Tyus here. You could have other point guard help in depth there as well. I think personally they should just go ahead and get Lonzo Ball, not because I'm a Bulls fan, but because you already started the Sacramento Bulls. Go ahead and get Lonzo Ball. You'll have Lonzo, DeMar, and Zach, and you can do what the Bulls try to do with Domantas Sabonis instead of Nikola Vucevic. But anyway, with that said, we'll see what here. The Kings needing a point guard makes a lot of sense. And how aggressive they are about going out there and getting a point guard, I think we'll see. They're trying to stabilize that point guard position and then really try to evaluate what this roster can be. I think that's what they're trying to do going forward, and we'll see what happens there. But let me know your thoughts on all that down below. Do you think the Pelicans and the Kings are looking in the right direction with keeping Zion for the Pelicans, and the Kings looking to Tyus Jones potentially to be their next starting point guard? Let me know what you guys think on that down below. Make sure you're following us at NBA Central Pod. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns. NBA Central Show at gmail.com. And then lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We're the number one spot for everything basketball related. I'll see you guys the next time I feel like making a video. Probably tomorrow. Peace, y'all.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.